Harrison. I'm one of the 98 interpreters who work here. I'm English. I was born in Birmingham in the UK, but I was brought up in the south of France near Avignon, which is where I learned my French. But I also lived in Ciudad Real in Spain for a couple of years, which is where I learnt my Spanish. So I've been in Geneva for 18 years. The first 7 I spent working as a freelancer interpreter for the organisations here in Geneva, and I've been working now for the United Nations Geneva office for 11 years. I'm an interpreter, which means that I service meetings housed by UNOG. I do around 250 a year. In the meetings, I will typically interpret from anything that's spoken in French or Spanish in the room. I will interpret into English in the booth simultaneously. That will be in Geneva. Occasionally, at an average at the moment of 1 per year, I might travel abroad as well on a mission with the UN. Typically, it tends to be with one of the Human Rights Council Special Procedures mandate holder, so a special rapporteur in charge of monitoring a human right in the world, right to education, right to water, that kind of thing. My meetings are, at least half of my meetings are on human rights. So it'll be either the Human Rights Council or reviews of states by the treaty bodies. There are 10 treaty bodies, most of whom meet down in Pally Wilson at the OHCHR. And the other 50% will be meetings on disarmament, either the Conference on Disarmament or one of the, I think there are 8 conventions which the UN monitors, so disarmament conventions. So human rights, disarmament, some UNCTAD work, so trade and development, international law, the International Law Commission, twice a year, and also, although I have French and Spanish, so I don't do these meetings as often as those who have French and Russian, and that is the ECE meetings, the Economic Commission for Europe meetings. They deal with a whole range of topics, including transport of dangerous goods, road traffic safety, things like that. I would go back 20 years because I think things were much easier 20 years ago. 20 years ago, people were in the room. They wouldn't read from statements, or not as much, and they didn't have time constraints. Today, because of what is happening in the world, and often because of the cost, people are not in the room. They're reading statements that have been sent to them from their capital, because communications are so much better today. And they often read that at top speed. Sometimes they haven't had time to read them themselves, so they don't really master, or they don't put the right intonation. And they've got time limits, which means that they have to read fast to get everything across. So in an ideal world, although I'm not naive, and we see things, how things are changing, I would like everybody to be in the room, and if they can't be in the room, they need to make the right arrangements so that we can hear them properly, have the right headsets, the right internet connection. They need to make sure that all their doors are closed at home. We can't hear the babies and the dogs barking. Ideally, I would like them not to read their statements. But if they have to read, because most of the time you have to read your statements, ideally they would have to read slowly and read their statements in a way that they show that they understand what they're reading. And finally, I would like there to be no time limits, which of course is impossible, because you have to have time limits, otherwise some delegations would talk all the time. So when there are time limits, people need to tailor what they say to the time limit, so that they're not just reading at top speed something that they've been told to read. If generally delegates understood what it took for them to be understood, then that would help us a lot, because then people would understand each other a lot better in the meetings. That's a very good question. It's a very good question. A few years ago, we would say, it would never happen. It will never change our job. But in the last few years, we have seen how effective Google Translate and all these things have become, and they are very, 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 very good. So we don't really know, because it doesn't matter how good the artificial intelligence is. I'm not a specialist, really. There are people who study this, so they're the people you should ask. I don't really know, but the intuition I have, and it doesn't mean that that I'm wrong. The intuition I have is that it doesn't matter how good the artificial intelligence is, it'll never be as good as us. Now, does that mean that in the long term, there will be fewer of us, and we'll just be monitoring the output? Maybe, but then that raises up questions of can you monitor the output in real time? I think it would be difficult to do. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Because the idea is, the more you feed into the examples, the artificial intelligence. The more you give artificial intelligence examples of things that have been said in the world, and correct how the artificial intelligence has dealt with each of all these different examples in the world. The more you do that loop, the more you're going to get a system that is better. But the science behind meaning is not complete. We still don't know what meaning is. We've got words and you've got meaning, and we don't know how the meaning is captured in the words. Now you can add your examples, different structures that mean different things or the same thing, but when you combine them together with other sentences, other structures, the possibilities are too many. That the meaning, you're never too sure of the meaning in the end.